I'm just kind of curious. Am I the only one who asks the following question? Why is this happening again? Has anybody in here ever asked themselves that question? Why is this happening again? I kind of think that in some ways we've all had that question show up, right? And I wanted to start off this conversation, if you will, with this. It's a poem, kind of, but it's called "There's a Hole in My Sidewalk." Has anybody ever heard this? So here we go. Chapter 1. I walk down the street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in. It takes me a long time to get out. Chapter 2. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I pretend I don't see it. I fall in again. I can't believe I'm in the same place. It still takes a long time to get out. Chapter 3. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it there. I still fall in. It's a habit. My eyes are open. I get out immediately. Chapter 4. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. Chapter 5. I walk down another street. Mm. Ah. Learning, observation, contemplation, awareness. Each one of those chapters describes a different level of consciousness. The poem starts off with what happens in our own life when we choose to ignore what life is really trying to share with us. The lessons, if you will, that our soul is trying to learn. My belief is that we came down here to learn a few things. And we can accept that those lessons are there for us to learn, or we can choose to ignore them. Because all of it is there for the purpose of experiencing ourselves on a grander level. And so we come down here and we have the opportunity, if we want to actually grow and expand. Don't have to. There's no have tos ever. But that's the opportunity that's presented itself. And as a result, what happens is during our life, there's going to be stuff that shows up. There's going to be people, there's going to be places, there's going to be events and situations that have a tendency to get our attention. Sometimes it's a little tap on the shoulder, as I always say, and sometimes it's the spiritual 2x4 right between the eyes, right? So, often when they show up, we can either accept those opportunities to grow and learn from them and move on, or not. We can choose to ignore them. We can choose to deny them. We can choose to pretend that they're really not there for us. In the first scenario, we slow down. We look at the thing or the things or the people or the places, and we just start getting curious. What's going on here? Why is this thing showing up again? Why is the same exact situation, the same exact type of person, the same thing that always happens at work, the same thing that always happens with money, the same things that always happens with my health? Why is this thing showing up again? But we get curious, not from a judgment or blame or shame standpoint, just genuinely curious. Why? What is it that I needed to learn on a soul level that's here for me? Why would I have chosen something like this? Why? The other scenarios, we just completely deny it, we ignore it, we pretend it doesn't exist. And we don't contemplate it. And as a result, guess what keeps happening? Over and over and over and over again. So in other words, what happens is we wind up getting stuck in a loop, seemingly that we can't get out of. And what I would say is I would call this the unconscious loop. And so what happens is this opportunity presents itself, the lesson shows up for us, but when we're in this unconscious loop, what happens is we have a tendency to ignore it, we have a tendency to deny it, we have a tendency to do nothing about it, and it sits there for a while until guess what? It shows up again. This is really what's happening on a soul level, folks. And it's not just going to show up once. It's not. It's going to keep presenting itself to you until all of a sudden you make a decision that says, okay, there's got to be something here for me because the same thing keeps showing up over and over and over again. What is going on here? And so this is the unconscious loop. And just like in the story, I'm going to go back to the poem because the first couple of steps in that story are really about states of consciousness. So in the first state, unconscious, I walk down the street, there's a deep hole in the sidewalk, I fall in. It takes me a long time to get out of it. How many people have ever been there? Raise your hands. Come on, raise your hands. And then what we're asking ourselves is, why is this always happening to me? Life isn't fair. In this state of consciousness, you are in victim mode, 100%. You are a victim. Woe is me. Nothing I can do about this. Can't change anything. Right? Right. And the question that we often ask ourselves when we're in this state of consciousness is, why is this happening to me? Again, you're a complete and total victim. 100%. Chapter 2, denial, right? I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole. Once again, I don't see it. I fall in it. I can't believe I'm in the same place. It still takes me a long time to get out of it. And the inner voice is saying, yeah, but this time it'll be different. I know it will. I know how this usually ends, but maybe, just maybe, not this time. But we're still in denial that it's showing up. We're still ignoring the truth and the reality of this thing showing up and why it's showing up, right? And the question we're asking ourselves is very similar to the first one, but there's a little bit of a nuance. Why does this keep happening to me? Why? Right? And by the way, just so everybody is really clear about this, especially for those of us that came from more of a traditional background who may want to think that the reason the thing keeps showing up is because we're being punished, which is how I used to think when I was more of a fundamentalist. I must be being punished for this because I got to be screwing something up. You're not being punished in any way, shape, or form. You're not. It's showing up because you wanted to learn this. That's why this thing keeps showing up over and over and over again. Here's the kicker, though. Here's the beautiful part about it, is that once you learn the lesson, guess what happens? You're free to move on. But it's not going to go anywhere until you learn the lesson that you came down here to learn. One of several, by the way, right? So this thing, I called it the repeating lesson cycle, and life keeps presenting the same lesson until we learn it. And that's what happens. And what changes that? Awareness. That's what changes it. Your awareness. It gives you the power to change or to get out of this loop that you feel like you're stuck in. Right? And that's what awareness does. So what happens in this process, what happens at these different levels of consciousness is we go over here, we're in this unconscious loop, and then all of a sudden we go, hey, wait a minute. I think what I want to do is I want to get out of victimhood, and I want to start standing into my own power. I'm going to start taking and tuning into myself and taking my power back, and all of a sudden everything shifts and we wind up going into a conscious loop. And this is where the lesson shows up, and instead of ignoring it, we actually look at it. And instead of pretending there's nothing there for us, we start to learn from it. What is this thing trying to teach me? And then all of a sudden, once we learn, then we start making changes in our life. And we start actually becoming a different person as a result of it. And then guess what? The lesson's complete, and we can begin the process of moving on. So we no longer are stuck in this loop, right? In terms of what that looks like in terms of the state of consciousness, we go to awareness, where all of a sudden we're starting to notice things. You still fall in some of the holes, but now all of a sudden you're like, hey, wait a minute. I can see what's kind of happening now. I see this pattern that I've got going on in my life, but I'm still struggling a little bit, and sometimes I still do this, but there starts to become awareness. And you can exchange out the word awareness for awakening. Just know that. The two are hand in hand. So you start to become conscious. You start waking up. You start paying attention to what it is that keeps showing up, these patterns. And now all of a sudden it's like just the beginning. We're not running here, folks. We're taking baby steps at this point in the process. But we are starting to notice, finally, light is starting to enter into the equation. Awareness is starting to enter into the equation, right? That is the first step. Here we're starting to ask the question, why do I keep doing this? Why am I doing this? Right? Whereas before, we weren't asking that question. We were ignoring it. We were pretending it didn't exist. In this process, this is where we start to take our power back and we quit being a victim. Right? The next level of consciousness is where we realize that in all situations, we have a choice on how we choose to show up. Chapter 4, choice. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk, but instead of walking into the hole, I walk around it. I am now in my power. I am now in choice. The inner voice says, I don't have to do this anymore. There's another way for me to do this. I don't have to continuously do the same pattern over and over and over again. I can do this differently. The question and choice is, what other choice can I make? Can I do this differently? Do I have to keep repeating the same old pattern over and over and over again? And it's at this level of awareness that we can start to fully understand and see what is the lesson? What is it that I'm trying to learn here? So that I can finally get it, so I can finally move on and start to make some changes in my own life. And then the final level of consciousness is when we actually start to change it, but we do it right here. So now, in other words, now we're starting to get out of our heads, we're starting to go into our hearts, and we have this beautiful dialogue with our soul. Like, is this really necessary for me to keep doing this over and over and over again? Can I stop this? Can I show up differently? Can I do it differently? And now this is where you start doing this beautiful dance with God and with your soul. And remember, in this process, there's no shame, there's no blame, there's no guilt, there's no judgment. I want you to imagine having this most beautiful, profound conversation where you're just wanting to learn and understand genuinely what it is that your soul is wanting to learn so that you can move on, right? And this is about transformation. This is when you finally walk down a different street. So we don't have to constantly be falling in the hole over and over and over again. And you get to ask the different questions. You get to say to yourself, what would I see down that street? What if I chose something different? How would I do that? Right? And the question you ask yourself at this level of consciousness is, who am I becoming? Who am I becoming? So, where are you at? What level of consciousness are you at with something that's going on in your life? Are you at a point where you can look at maybe some patterns that life is tapping you on the shoulder and saying, hey, it's time to pay attention? And could you think about the possibility of doing it without any shame, blame, guilt, or judgment? That you could love yourself enough, and I mean that with all my heart, to the point to where you could simply learn the lesson. Give yourself the permission to take the lesson into your soul and then move on. So you don't have to keep doing this thing over and over and over again. So as we close today, I just want to leave you with a simple thought. And that is most of us spend years asking, why is this happening to me again? And if we're honest, many of us eventually graduate to a slightly different question. Why does this keep happening to me? And that is where the real growth begins. So remember, today wasn't about fixing anything. It's just about becoming aware. It's not about changing anything. It wasn't even about understanding everything. It's just you standing in your power, becoming aware of what life and your soul has been wanting to learn and becoming aware of it. Awareness is the turning point. You can't change what you can't see. You can't. God's not going to come down and go, here, you need to look at this. That's not how it works. You have to be willing to go inside. You have to be willing to look at your own stuff in order for it to change. My prayer for years and years and years was, dear God, please heal me. Guess what happened? Nothing. I'm not kidding. Nothing happened. You know when things started to change? When I started to look at myself and I looked at my own crap, excuse my language, and then all of a sudden, one by one, I was able to start plucking out the limited beliefs, all this garbage that I had inside of my head about myself, about God, about other people, about the universe, about all these things. One by one, I started pulling them out of myself. That's when things started to change. Me sitting there saying, God, heal me, is a interesting attempt. That's the best way to put it, right? You can't heal what you refuse to acknowledge. You can't do it. That's not the way it works. And you can't graduate from a lesson that you don't even realize you're taking. The good news is awareness alone can begin the process to loosen the grip of the pattern. And that's what we're trying to do. That's what we're talking about it. And the moment that you can see the lesson, then all of a sudden you're no longer completely trapped by it. But here's the exciting part for those of you that are going to be here next week, is we're actually going to talk about, well, it's great, Mike. You're telling me I need to become aware of it, but you're not telling me what I need to do with it. Stay tuned. We're going to talk about that next week. We're going to explore how to stop thinking that you've got to spend years and years and years to fix this. You don't. You don't need to spend years to fix this stuff and to change it. You don't. Because contrary to what most people believe, growth doesn't have to be slow. I know that's what we were taught. That's what we were convinced. Oh, you just have to do this, and then it's going to take, 3, 4, 5, 10, 20, 30, 40 years. Suffering does not have to be your teacher. There is a different way. We, from a consciousness standpoint, are starting to understand this stuff doesn't need to take decades and decades and decades to heal. We can use other ways. There's other ways for you to heal that don't take years and years and years to do it. And that's what we're going to talk about. We can use a few spiritual tools that can dramatically accelerate this process, right? We go from a reaction to a response, from repeating the same lesson over and over and over again to actually learning it. And then what we get to do is we get to go, I got it. I got it. I got this lesson. I'm done with it. So next week, we're going to talk about contracts. And we're going to talk about this idea that once you're done with your contract, you can actually, and you learn the lesson, you can actually move on. And there's something that you can do very specifically in order to be done with the contract on a soul level. So, how's that sound? Not going to leave you hanging. I promise. Was this helpful? Did it help? Good. Good. I hope when we come together that there's a little bit of information that's shared, and I hope something inside of you has, I don't know, kind of got your attention. That's the goal here. Or maybe we got you to think a little bit. Or better yet, maybe you had a little bit of an experience here this morning, which is really my biggest hope. That there was something inside of your heart or your soul that said, you need to listen to whatever it was that I may or may not have said. You are absolutely a brilliant light of God. You are. And the only reason that you're not having that experience is because you bought a big line of crap that was put inside of your head a long time ago. And your job, should you choose to accept it, is to do everything in your power to remove those thoughts that say you are less than God or you're separate from God. If you can do those two things, I promise you this, your experience and your life will change dramatically. They will change dramatically. But God is not going to do it for you. That doesn't mean that God's not with you. So don't think that you're down here doing this all by yourself. We have got an army of angels waiting for us to ask them for help. So just remember that. You're not doing this alone. You are the brilliant light of God. And I really, really hope you remember that today and tomorrow and the next day. And then next Sunday, I hope you wake up and go, I got to go hear part 2. I love you. I'm so grateful to have you, each and every one of you. You all share your light with us all, and we're all blessed by your presence. Just know that. What a difference you make in this world. You do. I mean that. Each and every one of you make a huge difference. We're really lucky to have you here. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. God bless you. Namaste and Namaste. Have a great day, folks.